Hello. I'm really glad you're here tonight. This hour is different from the rest of the day. It doesn't ask you to decide anything. It doesn't ask you to perform or explain or keep up. It simply invites you to lie still and let your mind drift like a vessel on calm water, moving at the pace of ancient tides. As the years pass, nighttime becomes a kind of companion, a place where the mind is free to wander across vast distances without moving at all, where memories return, not urgently, but patiently, like ships appearing on a distant horizon, where understanding settles in quietly, the way silt settles in a harbor after the day's activity has ceased. Later in life, the mind doesn't race the way it once did. It reflects, it revisits, it connects threads that span not just your own lifetime, but centuries, millennia. It finds kinship with people you've never met, who lived in times you can only imagine. And it does this most honestly when the lights are off and the world has gone silent, when you're free to stand at the edge of time itself and look both forward and back. This space is for those thoughts, the ones that arrive only when you're alone with yourself, resting, remembering, and gently finding your place in the great current of human experience. The current that has carried us all from ancient ports to modern harbors, from the Funan Kingdom to tonight, from then to now. So take a slow breath. Let your body soften into the bed and allow this night to carry you where it will. And now, before we begin, if this kind of honest, gentle reflection speaks to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. There's something comforting about knowing we're all here together, scattered across time zones, but united in these late hours when the world finally grows still. So settle in, adjust your pillows, find a comfortable position, and know that for the next hour, you're not alone in whatever wisdom you're carrying, whatever understanding you've earned, whatever truths rise to the surface when the lights go out. Let's begin. You're lying in bed right now, but in your mind, you're standing at the water's edge. You've done this so many times throughout your life. Stood at the boundary between land and sea, between the solid and the fluid, between the known and the unknown. This simple act, this standing at the edge of water, you've performed it in so many places, at so many ages, in so many states of mind. And tonight, as you rest here, the memories return like waves, each one carrying something from the depths, each one depositing something at your feet before retreating again. You remember the first time you understood what a port was, what a harbor meant. You were young, small enough that the world seemed impossibly large. You stood somewhere near water, maybe an ocean, maybe a river, maybe just a lake, and you watched boats. You didn't understand commerce then. You didn't understand trade routes or economics or the intricate web of human exchange that makes civilization possible. You just saw boats, coming and going, arriving from somewhere, departing for somewhere else. The mystery of it captivated you. Where had they been? Where were they going? What did they carry? Who stood on their decks looking back at the shore, looking back at you, a small figure watching from the edge? You remember the smell. Every port smells the same in some essential way, even though each is unique. Salt and fish, wood and rope, oil and rust, the particular scent of water that has traveled, that has carried vessels, that has borne weight and witnessed passage. This smell entered your young lungs and lodged somewhere in your memory where it still lives. You remember the sounds: water lapping against wooden posts, the creak of boats rocking in their slips, ropes groaning, metal clanging against metal, the cries of seabirds, the voices of people calling to each other in the specific language of maritime work, commands, warnings, greetings, farewells. These sounds created a particular music, not beautiful necessarily, but compelling. The music of human activity at the edge of the world, the music of arrival and departure, the music of things in motion, even when they appeared to be still. You were fascinated by the waiting. Even as a child, you understood that ports were about waiting. Ships waited for favorable winds. Cargo waited to be loaded or unloaded. Merchants waited for vessels that might never arrive. Families waited for loved ones who had been gone for months or years or forever. Everyone at a port is waiting for something. This truth settled into you early. You saw it in the faces of the people who gathered at the water's edge, the particular expression of those whose eyes are fixed on the horizon, who are looking for a specific sail, a specific hull, a specific arrival that will change everything. You didn't know then that you would become one of those waiting people, that you would spend so much of your life looking toward horizons, anticipating arrivals, preparing for departures, that waiting would become not just something you did, but something you were. As you grew older, you began to understand what ports actually did, how they functioned. You learned that a port is a translator, a place where different worlds meet and exchange not just goods, but ideas, languages, customs, genes. A port is where the foreign becomes familiar, and the familiar becomes foreign. You learned that every object has a journey. The spices in your kitchen traveled from distant plants through countless hands. The fabric of your clothes was woven somewhere you'll never see by people you'll never meet. The wood of your furniture grew in forests you'll never walk through. Everything arrived. Everything came from elsewhere. Everything passed through ports. This understanding changed how you looked at the world. You began to see the invisible threads connecting everything, the vast network of human exchange that has existed for thousands of years, the great web of trade and travel that made you possible, that made your life possible, that made this modern world possible. And you began to imagine the ancient ports, the ones that existed long before your time, the ones that facilitated exchanges your history books barely mention, the ones that have vanished entirely, buried under silt, or swallowed by jungles, or simply forgotten as the rivers changed course and the trade routes shifted and whole civilizations rose and fell. You learned about the Funan Kingdom, maybe in school, maybe much later. Maybe you'd never heard of it until tonight. But once you learned, you couldn't stop imagining it. Funan, the great maritime kingdom of Southeast Asia, flourishing between the 1st and 6th centuries, controlling the Mekong Delta, dominating the trade routes between India and China, a civilization built entirely on port life, on the ability to receive ships from the west carrying Indian gold and textiles, and on the ability to send ships east carrying Chinese silk and ceramics. Funan existed because of its ports. Because of Okeo and other harbor cities whose names have been lost. Cities that thrived at the meeting point of monsoon winds and river currents. Cities where Tamil traders met Chinese merchants. Where Buddhist monks debated with Hindu priests. Where languages mixed and cultures blended and something new emerged from the constant flow of people and goods and ideas. You imagine standing at the port of Okeo in the 3rd century. You close your eyes now, resting in your bed, and you let yourself be there. 1500 years ago, 1600 years ago. Time collapses. Distance disappears. You are there at the water's edge in a world that no longer exists, but once was as real as this moment. The sun is intense, hotter than you're used to. The humidity is absolute. It wraps around you like a second skin. You're sweating in places you didn't know you could sweat. But this is normal. This is every day. This is the climate that shapes everything about life here. You're standing on a wooden dock that extends into a wide canal. This canal connects to the river. The river connects to the sea. The sea connects to everything. To India across the Bay of Bengal. To China up the coast. To island kingdoms scattered across what will one day be called Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines. The sea is not a barrier here. It's a highway. It's possibility itself. The dock is crowded. It's always crowded. Port life means density. It means bodies pressed close. It means constant negotiation of space. You're surrounded by people who look different from each other. Different skin tones, different clothing styles, different languages, creating a constant babble of sound. You hear Tamil being spoken to your left. A merchant from southern India is negotiating prices with a local trader. The numbers go back and forth. The Tamil merchant gestures broadly. The Funan trader remains calm, impassive. This is a dance they both know well. Eventually, they'll agree. They always agree. That's why they're both here. To your right, someone is speaking an early form of Chinese. You don't understand the words, but you recognize the tonal quality, the rising and falling pitches that carry meaning. A group of Chinese travelers has just arrived after months at sea. They're exhausted. You can see it in their faces, the particular exhaustion of people who have been at the mercy of wind and wave for longer than anyone should be. They're relieved to be on solid ground. Even this dock, which sways slightly with the movement of water, feels stable compared to the deck of a ship in a storm. They made it. They survived. Not everyone does. They know this. You know this. Everyone at a port knows this. Death is always present at ports. You see it in the offerings left at small shrines along the waterfront, in the prayers whispered before departures, in the tears of those who wait and eventually stop waiting because the ship is too many months overdue and hope has finally been exhausted. The sea gives and the sea takes. The river gives and the river takes. Water is both life and death. It brings prosperity in the form of trade goods and fish and rice from paddies that depend on the river's annual flooding. but it also brings storms and shipwrecks and pirates and diseases that travel on the same vessels that carry silk and spices. You're learning to hold this duality, learning that everything precious comes with risk. That connection requires vulnerability. That opening yourself to the foreign means accepting that you will be changed by it, and that change always involves a kind of death of who you were before. You watch cargo being unloaded from a ship that arrived this morning. The vessel is larger than you expected. Its hull is dark with tar. Its sail is furled. Teams of workers are carrying bundles from the hold to the dock. They move in rhythm, like a single organism. They've done this thousands of times. Their bodies know the work without conscious thought. You wonder what's in the bundles. Silk from China, probably. Silk is always moving through here. The finest fabrics in the world, woven by hands you'll never see, carried across distances you can barely comprehend, arriving here to be redistributed, to continue their journey west to India, to Persia, to Rome itself. Some of the silk will stay here. The rulers of Funan wear silk. The wealthy merchants wear silk. Silk is power made visible. Silk is connection to distant empires. Silk is proof that Funan matters, that these ports matter, that the people here are part of something larger than their local world. But there's more than silk. There are ceramics. You see workers handling clay vessels with extreme care. These are valuable. These are Chinese porcelain, the kind that takes skill to make, that requires specific clay and specific heat and knowledge that is carefully guarded. These vessels will be prized here. They will be displayed in the homes of the wealthy. They will be given as gifts to seal important agreements. They will become heirlooms passed down through generations. There are also raw materials. You see bundles of wood, types that don't grow here. Woods prized for their density, their grain, their resistance to insects. These will become furniture, religious carvings, the frames of important buildings. Each piece of wood traveled for months to be here. And there are things you can't see yet, but you know are there. Medicines from Chinese herbalists, books containing philosophy and poetry and technical knowledge, musical instruments, games, seeds for plants that don't grow here, but might if someone tries hard enough. Small pieces of other worlds arriving here, ready to be integrated into this world. On another part of the dock, cargo is being loaded onto a ship preparing to depart. This vessel will sail west. It will carry Southeast Asian goods to Indian ports. You watch workers carrying sacks of pepper. Pepper is wealth. Pepper is worth more than its weight suggests. In India, in Persia, in Rome, people will pay extraordinary prices for this pepper. Wars will be fought over spice routes. Empires will rise and fall based on who controls the flow of pepper and cinnamon and cloves. The workers also load bundles of aromatic woods, sandalwood, eaglewood, woods that produce scents prized for religious ceremonies, for medicine, for luxury. These trees grow in the forests inland from here. Local people know where to find them. They know which trees can be harvested and which must be left to mature. This knowledge is valuable. This knowledge is carefully protected. There are also forest products you recognize from your own time. Resins for incense, dyes made from plants and insects, medicinal plants that healers in distant lands will use to treat ailments that also exist in your time, in your world, because human bodies haven't changed that much in 1600 years, and there are people being loaded onto ships, not as cargo, though that horror exists here too, in some form, but as passengers, as travelers, as monks and merchants and adventurers and diplomats, people leaving Funan to seek their fortunes elsewhere, people who will never return, people who will carry memories of this port for the rest of their lives, memories that will surface when they're old and lying in their own beds in distant lands, remembering the smell of the Mekong Delta, the heat, the sounds, the particular quality of light on water at dawn. You wonder about their lives, where they'll end up, what they'll accomplish, whether they'll be happy, whether they'll regret leaving or regret not leaving sooner, whether they'll die at sea or make it safely to their destinations. You'll never know. They're just moments, just faces in a crowd at a port 1600 years ago. But they were real. They lived. They felt what you feel. They worried and hoped and loved and grieved. They stood at this water's edge and looked at the horizon and wondered what lay beyond it. Just like you've done, just like you're doing now, in your bed, in your time, looking back at them across an impossible distance that feels, in this moment, not distant at all. You notice the children at the port. They're everywhere, running between cargo, playing games that involve pretending to be sailors or merchants or pirates, getting in the way of workers who shoo them aside with practiced gestures that suggest this happens constantly. Some of the children are working, even the young ones. They're carrying small bundles, running messages, learning trades from their parents or from masters who have taken them on as apprentices. Port life starts young. If you're born here, the port is your world. You learn its rhythms before you learn to read. You understand tides before you understand time. You watch one child in particular, a girl, maybe 8 years old. She's standing at the very edge of the dock, looking out at a ship that's just visible on the horizon. She's completely still, focused, waiting. You know that look. You wore that look yourself many times, the look of someone waiting for a specific arrival. Her father is on that ship, perhaps, or her mother, or both. They've been gone for months. She's been standing at this dock every day, watching for their return. And today, finally, the ship appears. You see her whole body change as the ship gets closer. The tension releases. The hope becomes certainty. That's the ship. That's them. They made it. They survived. They're coming home. She starts jumping, waving, calling out even though they can't possibly hear her yet. She's pure joy, pure relief. The waiting is over. The uncertainty is resolved. The people she loves are returning. You feel this in your chest, this recognition. You've been that child, maybe not at a port, maybe at a train station or an airport or just a driveway, but you've been that person whose whole world depended on someone coming back, and you felt that moment when they did, when the waiting ended, when you were made whole again by someone's arrival. And you've also been the person on the ship, the one returning, looking toward shore and seeing the small figure waving, feeling your own relief and joy, knowing you've been missed, knowing you're expected, knowing you have a place to return to. And you've been the person who waited, and the ship never came, who stood at the edge day after day until the days became weeks and the weeks became months, and eventually you stopped going to the water's edge because hope had become too painful to carry. All of this exists at the port. All these human experiences, all this love and loss and reunion and separation. The port witnesses everything. It makes no judgments. It simply facilitates arrivals and departures, coming and going, the eternal rhythm of port life. The sun is setting now over the Funan port. The light is golden. It transforms everything. The water becomes molten. The ships become silhouettes. The busy dock begins to quiet as the day's main work concludes. But the port never fully stops. Even at night, there's activity. Guards patrol. Ships arrive that travel by night to avoid the day's heat or to take advantage of night winds. Merchants count their goods by lamplight. Repairs continue on vessels that need to be seaworthy by dawn. You walk along the waterfront as darkness settles. You're not sure if you're imagining yourself as a resident of Funan or if you're yourself, your modern self, somehow transported back. The distinction doesn't matter. The experience is what matters. The feeling of being here, of witnessing this world. You pass shrines dedicated to gods you recognize and gods you don't. Hindu deities and Buddhist figures and local spirits that predate both religions. Port cities are religiously complex. They have to be. They receive people of all faiths. They have to make room for everyone's gods because everyone's money spends the same. This tolerance is practical, not necessarily philosophical, but it creates something remarkable anyway. A place where different beliefs coexist, where people who worship different gods work side by side, where temples and shrines stand near each other without conflict, because the work of the port is more important than theological disputes. You understand this. In your own life, you've learned that differences don't have to mean division, that people can believe different things and still cooperate, still care for each other, still recognize their common humanity beneath their different costumes and customs and gods. The port taught you this. Not any specific port, but the idea of ports, the understanding that connection is possible across difference, that exchange doesn't require sameness, that we can meet at edges and waterfronts and boundaries and find ways to communicate, to trade, to share, even when we don't speak the same language or worship the same gods or come from the same world. You find a quiet spot and sit, your modern self, sitting on an ancient dock, your elderly body resting against a post that has long since rotted away. Time is strange, flexible, especially at night, especially in imagination, especially when you're lying in bed, allowing your mind to wander across centuries. You look at the water. It reflects the first stars, the same stars visible from your bedroom window tonight, the same stars that have watched over every human civilization that has ever existed. The stars don't care about human time. They shine for everyone, for you and for the merchants of Funan, for the child waiting for her parents, and for the sailors navigating by starlight, for everyone who has ever looked up and felt small and connected simultaneously. You think about what it means that Funan is gone, that this entire civilization, this sophisticated network of ports and trade routes and diplomatic relationships has vanished, that the cities are buried, that the language is lost, that the names of the people who built this are forgotten. This should be sad, and it is, but it's also strangely comforting. Everything passes, everything changes. The ports that seemed permanent were temporary. The wealth that seemed eternal was fleeting. The power that seemed absolute was limited. But while it existed, it was real. These people lived real lives. They loved and worked and worried and celebrated. They built something remarkable. They created systems of exchange that connected distant worlds. They made choices that rippled forward through time, that influenced everything that came after, that led eventually to you, to this moment, to this night. You are their descendant in some sense. Not necessarily genetically, though who knows what genes you carry from ancient travelers. But you're their descendant in spirit, in practice, in the simple fact that you live in a world they helped create. A world of global trade and cultural exchange and interconnected economies. They built an early version of the system you take for granted. Every time you eat food from another continent, you're participating in something the Funan merchants would recognize. Every time you wear clothing made in a distant factory, you're part of their legacy. Every time you wait for a package to arrive, you're experiencing a modern version of port life, waiting for something to come from elsewhere, anticipating an arrival, tracking a journey across distances. You're lying in bed now, but you're also still at the water's edge. Both things are true. You're in your room, in your time, and you're at the Funan port in the 3rd century. Time has collapsed. Distance has disappeared. You're everywhere you've ever been and everywhere you've ever imagined being. The water laps against the dock. The sound is eternal, unchanging across centuries. Water touching wood, wood touching water. The boundary between elements, the edge where transformation happens. You close your eyes. There at the ancient port, here in your modern bed. The distinction no longer matters. You're simply present, simply breathing, simply being part of the great continuum of human experience that stretches from the first boats to tonight, from the first ports to this moment, from the first person who stood at a water's edge and wondered what lay beyond to you, wondering the same thing. You open your eyes again at the port. Dawn is breaking. You've been here all night. Or perhaps no time has passed at all. Time moves differently in ports, differently in memory, differently when you're lying in bed, allowing your mind to travel. The morning light is soft, gentle. The air is already warm, but not yet oppressive. This is the best time at the port, before the heat becomes unbearable, before the crowds become overwhelming, before the day's demands take over completely. You watch the port come alive. This is a gradual process, not sudden, not jarring. It happens in layers, in stages, like sleep leaving your body in the morning. First one person appears, then another, then small groups. Then the dock is populated with people whose movements create a kind of choreography you could watch forever. The fishermen arrive before dawn. They're already returning with their catches. You see them bringing in baskets filled with silver fish. The fish are still moving, still alive, still fighting against the inevitability of their capture. The fishermen work quickly. They know which fish to keep and which to throw back. They know the patterns of the sea, the migrations, the seasons, the places where fish gather. This knowledge was passed down from their fathers and grandfathers. It will be passed to their sons and grandsons. Knowledge flowing through time like water. A woman sets up a stall near the dock's entrance. She's selling prepared food, rice wrapped in leaves, grilled fish, fruits you recognize and fruits you don't. The merchants and workers will buy from her throughout the day. Port work is hungry work. The body burns through energy quickly in this heat. People need sustenance constantly. You smell her cooking fire. Wood smoke mixed with fish and spices. Your stomach responds, even though you haven't had a real body here, even though you're actually lying in bed centuries in the future. The smell is that powerful, that evocative. Smell crosses time more easily than sight or sound. You remember the meals of your own life, the specific dishes that marked specific times, the foods that meant comfort, the recipes passed down in your family, the tastes that can transport you instantly to childhood, to your grandmother's kitchen, to a specific holiday, to a moment of happiness or grief or celebration. Food is memory made solid. Food is culture preserved. Food is connection across generations. And at a port, food is also exchange. Spices traveling from distant islands, cooking techniques shared between cultures, new ingredients arriving that will transform local cuisine forever. The traders are setting up their displays. They arrange their goods with care. Presentation matters. A beautiful display attracts buyers, creates desire, suggests value. They know this instinctively. They've been doing this since they were children, learning from their parents, absorbing the subtle arts of commerce through observation and practice. You see silk displayed on wooden frames. The fabric catches the light. It seems to glow from within. Buyers will come. They always come. Silk is irresistible. Everyone wants to touch it, to feel its impossible smoothness, to imagine wearing it, to imagine being transformed by it. Next to the silk, ceramics are arranged in careful rows, each piece placed precisely. The merchant knows that one careless moment could destroy something that survived months at sea. He handles each vessel with reverence. These objects represent enormous investment, enormous risk. They were made far away. They traveled through storms and calm. They made it here intact. Now they must be sold. The merchant's entire fortune depends on finding buyers. You watch him work and you recognize something. The particular anxiety of people whose livelihood depends on uncertain outcomes, who have invested everything in a venture that might fail, who wait for buyers who might not come, who depend on weather and winds and the decisions of strangers. You felt this yourself, in different contexts, different eras, but the feeling is the same. The vulnerability of having risked everything, the fear that it won't work out, the hope that it will, the waiting, always the waiting. A ship arrives as the sun climbs higher. You hear it before you see it. The calls of the crew, the splash of oars, the creak of wood. Then it rounds the bend in the canal and becomes visible. It's larger than most of the vessels here. It's traveled far. You can tell by the wear on its hull, by the exhaustion visible on the faces of its crew. The port erupts into activity. Word spreads instantly. A major ship has arrived. This means goods. This means news. This means stories. This means everything the port exists for. The meeting of distant and local. The arrival of elsewhere. You join the crowd gathering to watch the ship dock. Everyone wants to see. Everyone wants to know what it carries, where it's been, what news it brings from the wider world. The ship is a messenger, a carrier of information, a bridge between the known and the unknown. The captain stands at the bow. He's weathered, sun-darkened. His eyes have the particular quality of people who've spent months looking at horizons. He surveys the port, evaluating, deciding. He's been here before, many times probably, but each arrival is different. Each time the port has changed in small ways. New faces, different goods, subtle shifts in power and wealth and influence. He calls out to the harbour master. They speak a trading language, a pidgin that combines elements of multiple tongues. This language exists only in ports, only at edges where different linguistic worlds meet. It's practical, functional, not beautiful but effective. It allows people who share no common tongue to negotiate, to trade, to conduct the business that ports exist for. You understand some of it, not the words exactly, but the meaning, the rhythm of negotiation, the back and forth of offer and counter-offer, the dance of commerce that humans have been performing for thousands of years, since the first person had something another person wanted, since the first exchange, since the first understanding that cooperation benefits everyone. The ship is secured, ropes are tied, the gangplank is lowered, crew members begin to disembark. They're unsteady on land, sea legs adjusting to solid ground. This adjustment takes time. The body remembers the constant motion of waves. The mind expects the deck to rise and fall. When it doesn't, there's disorientation. Brief, but real. You watch them adapt. Watch their bodies recalibrate. Watch them become land creatures again after months of being sea creatures. This transformation happens every time ships arrive, every time sailors return. The body is flexible, adaptable. It learns to live in whatever environment it finds itself. This is human genius. This is how we've survived, how we've spread across the entire world, how we've made homes in every climate and terrain. We adapt. The cargo begins to be unloaded. This process will take days. There's no hurry. Rushing creates mistakes. Mistakes create losses. Everything must be counted, inspected, verified. The merchants who own the goods watch carefully. They track every bundle, every container. Their wealth is being transferred from ship to shore. This is a vulnerable moment. This is when things can go wrong. But the port workers are skilled, trustworthy. The port's reputation depends on secure transfers. Goods must arrive intact. Merchants must be confident that what they ship will reach its destination in the condition it left. Trust is everything. Trust is what makes trade possible across vast distances. Trust is what allows strangers to do business together. You think about trust in your own life, how you've given it, how you've received it, how you've broken it and had it broken, how you've rebuilt it slowly after betrayals, how you've learned to offer it carefully, but still offer it. Because without trust, there's no connection, no relationship, no possibility of real exchange. Port life is built on trust. Ships trust that ports will receive them fairly. Merchants trust that their goods will be handled honestly. Buyers trust that what they purchase is what they were promised. Workers trust that they'll be paid for their labor. This web of trust makes everything possible. When trust breaks down, ports die, trade routes shift, ships go elsewhere, the prosperity evaporates. Cities that depended on ports collapse. This has happened throughout history. This will happen to Funan eventually. When the trust erodes, when the political situation changes, when the rivers shift course, when newer ports offer better terms, when the great wheel of history turns and what was central becomes peripheral. But today, in this moment, the trust holds. The port functions. The exchange happens. The goods move from ship to shore, from shore to warehouses, from warehouses to markets, from markets to homes scattered across the kingdom and beyond. You watch a particular bundle being carried to a warehouse. You don't know what it contains, but you imagine. Scrolls perhaps, texts from China or India, philosophy, poetry, technical manuals, religious scriptures, knowledge preserved on paper or palm leaves or silk, knowledge that will be read by scholars in Funan, that will influence thinking here, that will be copied and sent elsewhere. Knowledge flowing like water through the ports of the world. The port is a library, a university, a school. People come here not just to trade goods, but to trade ideas. Travelers tell stories. Monks teach techniques. Merchants share information about distant markets. Everyone who arrives carries knowledge. Everyone who departs takes knowledge with them. You learn this pattern in your own life. How every encounter is an exchange. How every conversation potentially changes you. How you're constantly being modified by contact with others. Their ideas entering your mind. Their perspectives shifting yours. Their experiences teaching you things you couldn't have learned alone. The afternoon heat is building. It's becoming oppressive. People seek shade. Work slows. This is siesta time. The time when the port rests. When even the most energetic merchants and workers have to acknowledge the limits of the human body in tropical heat. You find shade under a palm-roofed structure. Others gather here too. Strangers becoming temporary companions. Sharing space. Sharing silence. Sharing the simple relief of being out of the direct sun. An old merchant sits near you. His skin is deeply lined. His hands are gnarled. He's been doing this for 50 years or more. He's seen everything the port can show. He's survived storms and pirates. He's made fortunes and lost them. He's watched dynasties rise and fall. He's outlived most of his contemporaries. He's not working right now. He's simply watching, observing, remembering. You recognize the expression on his face. It's the same expression you see in your own mirror. the expression of someone who has lived long enough to see patterns, to understand cycles, to know that everything changes and everything stays the same. You want to ask him questions. What was it like when he was young? What has changed? What has stayed the same? What does he regret? What is he proud of? What wisdom has he earned through decades of port life? But you don't speak. You simply sit near him. Two old souls, separated by 16 centuries, but united in the experience of having lived long enough to understand what matters and what doesn't, what endures and what evaporates, what's worth holding on to and what must be released. He nods at you. You nod back. This is enough. This is communication. This is recognition. Two people who understand the weight of years, the gift of having survived this long, the burden of remembering so much. The heat begins to break as afternoon becomes evening. The port stirs again. Work resumes. The rhythm picks up. There's urgency now. Much needs to be accomplished before darkness falls. Ships need to be fully unloaded. Cargo needs to be secured. Accounts need to be settled. The day's business needs to conclude. You watch the intensity increase. The port becomes a hive, everyone moving with purpose, everyone contributing to the great machine of commerce. It's beautiful in its way. This cooperation, this collective effort towards shared goals, humans working together, creating something larger than any individual could create alone. This is what civilization is. This cooperation, this exchange, this willingness to trust strangers enough to build systems together, to create ports and laws and currencies and agreements that make trade possible. To imagine that people from different cultures can meet peacefully and exchange goods and benefit mutually. It doesn't always work. There are betrayals. There are conflicts. There are systems of exploitation. There is suffering embedded in these exchanges. You know this. The port has dark aspects too. Slavery exists here, in some form. Inequality exists. Power imbalances exist. Not everyone benefits equally. Not everyone is free. But the ideal exists too. The dream of peaceful exchange, of connection across difference, of prosperity through cooperation. This ideal, however imperfectly realized, has driven human civilization forward, has created the interconnected world you inhabit, has made possible the comforts and technologies you take for granted. Evening brings cooler air, relief. The colors of sunset paint everything gold and orange and pink. The water becomes a mirror for the sky. The port is beautiful in this light. All the rough edges are softened. All the hard realities are temporarily obscured by beauty. People gather for evening meals. Families reunite after the day's work. The food vendor you saw this morning is still here, still cooking. Her fire is a warm glow in the gathering darkness. People cluster around it, eating, talking, laughing, sharing the day's stories. You listen to their conversations. You don't understand all the words, but you understand the tones, the rhythms, the patterns of human social interaction that haven't changed in thousands of years. Gossip, jokes, complaints, plans. The ordinary talk of ordinary people living ordinary lives that are also extraordinary, also valuable, also worthy of remembrance. These people are dead now, long dead, gone for more than a millennium. Everyone at this port, every person you've watched today, every face you've observed, all dead. Turned to dust, returned to the earth that briefly shaped them into living beings. This should be depressing, but it's not, because they lived. They were here. They mattered. Their lives were real. Their joys and sorrows and daily routines were as real as yours, as valid, as important. And in some way, they're still here, still alive in memory, in imagination, in the fact that you, lying in your bed in your time, can conjure them, can witness their world, can honor their existence by paying attention, by caring about their lives, by recognizing them as your ancestors in the great family of humanity. Night falls completely. The port doesn't sleep, but it quiets. The energy shifts from active to watchful. Guards patrol. Lanterns are lit at intervals along the waterfront. Their light reflects on the dark water, creating paths of gold on black. You walk along the water's edge one more time. Your feet know this path now. The rhythm of it, the texture of the wooden planks beneath you, the slight give of boards worn smooth by countless feet over countless years. You stop at the very edge, the boundary between solid and liquid, between land and sea, between here and elsewhere, between now and then, between past and present and future. You look out at the water, at the darkness, at the stars reflected on the surface, and you understand something profound. You understand that you're standing at the edge of yourself, at the boundary of your own life, looking back at where you've been, looking forward at where you're going. Your life has been a kind of port, a place where different versions of yourself have arrived and departed, where childhood docked and adulthood set sail, where innocence unloaded its cargo and experience took on new freight, where everything you've been has come together and everything you'll become is preparing to leave. You've been both ship and port, both traveler and destination, both the one who waits and the one who arrives, both the one who departs and the one who's left behind. Every relationship was a voyage. Every love was a journey across uncertain waters. Some returned safely. Some were lost at sea. Some changed you so fundamentally that you were never the same person after they arrived. Every phase of your life was cargo. Lessons learned, experiences gained, wisdom accumulated, pain carried, joy transported. All of it loaded and unloaded at different ports, different ages, different versions of yourself receiving what earlier versions sent forward. You're old enough now to see the whole route, the entire journey, from the first port to this one, from birth to now, the complete map of your travels through time, and it looks remarkably like trade routes, circular, returning, covering the same waters but never quite the same way twice. The Funan port fades slightly, becomes translucent. You're seeing through it to your own bedroom, to your own bed, to your own present moment. The two realities overlay, ancient and modern, port and bedroom, water's edge and bed's edge. You're lying down now, fully, completely. The covers are pulled up. The pillows are arranged perfectly. Your body is comfortable. relaxed. The journey has tired you in the best way, the way long walks tire you, the way good work tires you, the way being fully present tires you. You close your eyes and you're still at the port. But the port is quieting. The sounds are fading. The voices are becoming whispers. The activity is slowing. Everything is winding down. Everything is preparing for rest. The old merchant you sat with earlier is still there, still watching, but his eyes are closing. He's ready to sleep, ready to let the day end, ready to trust that tomorrow will come and the port will still be here, and the work will continue, and the great cycles of arrival and departure will go on without his constant supervision. You feel the same readiness, the same willingness to let go, to stop watching, to stop thinking, to simply rest. The port has taught you what it needed to teach you. The lessons of exchange and connection, the wisdom of edges and boundaries, the understanding that everything comes from elsewhere and everything goes to elsewhere. And you are simply a temporary point on an infinite network of human connection. You are a port. You receive and you give. You welcome and you release. You hold things temporarily and then you let them continue their journey. This is what life is. This is what you've been doing all along without quite realizing it. The water is calm now, perfectly still, like glass, like a mirror, reflecting stars, reflecting light, reflecting everything and holding nothing, being what it is without effort, without struggle, without needing to be anything other than what it is. You want to be like the water, calm, still, reflective, present, simply being, simply breathing, simply existing without needing to accomplish or achieve or prove anything. The covers are warm, your bed is comfortable, your body is heavy with relaxation, your mind is quiet. The echoes of the port are fading. The voices are distant now. The sounds of water and wood and rope are becoming part of the general silence. You're grateful for this night, for this journey, for the ability to travel through time and space while lying perfectly still, for the imagination that allows connection across centuries, for the empathy that lets you care about people you've never met who died long before you were born. You're grateful for your own life, for the ports you've known, the edges you've stood at, the arrivals and departures you've witnessed, the exchanges you've participated in, the connections you've made, the trust you've given and received, the cargo you've carried through your years. You're grateful to be here, now, still breathing, still present, still able to wonder and imagine and remember, still capable of being moved by the simple fact of human existence, yours and theirs, then and now, ancient and modern, all of it connected, all of it part of one great story. The Funan port is almost completely faded now. Just a shimmer, just a memory, just a dream. But it was real. It existed. And for this hour, you existed there too. You were present in that world. You witnessed those lives. You honored that civilization by paying attention to it. And now it's time to let it go. Time to release it back to history, back to the past, back to wherever ancient worlds go when we stop imagining them. You breathe slowly, deeply, the breath of someone who's ready for sleep, ready for dreams, ready for whatever comes next. Your body sinks deeper into the mattress. Your muscles release their last tensions. Your mind quiets its last thoughts. Everything is settling. Everything is becoming still. You are the port at midnight. Quiet but not empty. Resting but not abandoned. Simply being. Simply present. Simply here. The water laps gently against ancient docks, against modern shores, against the edge of consciousness, against the boundary between waking and dreaming. You're crossing that boundary now, gently, easily, without resistance. The way ships enter harbors when the winds are favorable. The way merchants complete successful exchanges. The way everything flows when it's allowed to flow naturally. Sleep is coming. You can feel it, like a ship on the horizon, like something expected, like something welcome. You don't resist, you don't fight, you simply wait, simply allow, simply trust that it will arrive. And it does. The fires die down, the stories settle, and the world grows still. Let your thoughts drift away like embers on the wind. Good night. You've journeyed far through time tonight. Now it's time to journey into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe, and let sleep find you.